Hello, everybody. We're on BOF Live today with Iman, and I can't tell you how excited I am to see her again. It's been years, but we always have stuff to talk about. So, Iman, welcome to BOF Live.
Thank you for having me. And as I said on Instagram, I love your hair. Don't cut it.
It's kind of Samson now. I don't know what I can't cut it. We can't go to barbers. We've been closed. You know, they've all been closed for months.
I know. Thank God to wigs for us girls. That's all I can say.
How you're coming up to your anniversary in New York of the lockdown. How has the year been for you?
It's been challenging. You know, I went in on March without understanding what is really the lockdown would be about and how difficult it was going to be. I went upstate to my house in the country for a week and ended up being there for the whole year, with the exception of coming back once, you know, every couple of months for a doctor visit or something. But really been challenging because it has been isolating. You know, I've never suffered depression or anxiety, but I had a lull of depression, you know, hanging around. And at the beginning, you couldn't see even friends because you didn't know where anybody has been. And, you know, and I don't have underlying health issues, but it was just, you didn't know much. So I felt much safer being upstate because I can go hiking, I can go be outside without being stuck in an apartment in the city. So I was under those people who had a privilege in that way, that I had another house. You know, I had friends who were stuck in the city, who have 3, 4 children, little children, you know, in apartments, schools closed, you know, businesses closed. It's really hard. The only thing I could, when I came back to the city this couple of weeks ago, you know, walking around in Soho, where I live in the city, is the amount of businesses that have closed. The only thing I can compare it to is 9/11. When 9/11 happened, that's the amount of small businesses closed. But the restaurants, the businesses that have closed across the board for blocks and blocks and blocks in New York, in Soho, where I live, it's disheartening and depressing. But the good news is that finally the Biden administration have passed the bill, and people are getting some money, and you know, and especially also restaurants are going to get some money. So the administration is trying to bring some of the businesses back, but it is the relentless and not understanding people that they really still have to mask. Although you know, we're getting all our vaccines. I got my first vaccine a couple of weeks ago. Oh, you too, great. So, you know, it's just, you know, just the regular things. Wash your hands, put your mask on, you know, just give it time for all of us to get vaccinated. So,
you know, it's been a year where, because it was such a, you know, nobody's ever had an experience like this before, and people were at home and they couldn't do anything else. So it was a year where people said, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to learn a language. I'm going to learn how to play an instrument. I'm going to acquire some skill I never had. I started singing, which was kind of strange. Did you do anything this year that you hadn't done before that you'd always wanted to do?
Actually, I started painting, but it was not something that I'd ever wanted to do. Because, you know, I had no talent for it. I've never tried it. I had no interest in it. I love paintings. I love art. My husband was a painter. My daughter is a painter. So, you know, but I was not inclined that way. You know, I admired what they do, but I've never done it. So I took up on painting around April, May last year. And one thing I've realized is that it really, you don't have to be good at anything to start. You know, you just start, get out of your own way and just start. And I really, really enjoyed it. My only problem now is that I have no idea what I'm doing, but I would love to take classes, but there is no so nobody around. So I'm like, how come I can't find a private teacher? So, but there is no connection. There is no place that you can find people. But hopefully by May, we hear that everything is everybody, at least in New York, is going to be vaccinated. And so maybe in the summer, I'll get a tutor to help me.
What's your style?
I like charcoal.
Oh,
I like charcoal.
Good.
Yeah, I like charcoal. I like the moodiness of it. I like either nude charcoals or landscape charcoals. So that's what I'm, hopefully be good at it, try it, yeah.
And this picture behind you.
Oh, this is David's painting. David was a huge collector of painting. And, he was one of those people, he didn't collect cars, he didn't collect homes. Painting was his thing. He loved painting. And so we had a lot of diverse group of painters, and we had some in the storage. So when he passed away, we've sold some of the art that he wanted us to sell. And I went into the storage to replace some of the stuff that were taken out of the apartment and the house. And I found all these paintings by David. I was like, why are they in storage? Because he had other paintings. So what I did is that I framed all those and now I live with them. Yes, I have them.
Incredibly accomplished.
Yes, you have no idea the amount of paintings he did that. And there are beautiful charcoals he did of me that I've found in there. I was aware of them, but we've been married for over 25 years. So, but he'll always do paintings of me, charcoal paintings of me. Maybe that's why I like the charcoal. So he would do all these portraits, nudes of me. And so I have all that.
But what do you think about that maybe in the future, this work is going to become something, that maybe people who won't even know who he is at that point will find the pictures.
Yes.
And, that reassessment that history does, that fascinates me.
Yeah. He's never taken himself seriously as a painter. That's why he had him in storage. But he is very accomplished. He's very, very good at it. He's very good at it. And I'm hoping that Lexi, our daughter, is going to take on that. Yeah, I think that is where her strength is,
Are you a believer in destiny?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I met David. I was always a David's music fan, so I've been to his concerts since I arrived in 1976 in New York. So every concert that came through the city, I've been to all his concerts, and I was invited backstage, but I never went backstage, But yeah, so all of a sudden I stopped modeling in 89, 1991, I moved to LA completely, distance myself from the business so that I can just assess what I want to do next. And I go to LA. And there's a photographer called Greg Gorman invited me to his house for dinner, and there was a couple of other people there, and I met this hairdresser called Teddy, and Teddy then invited me a couple of weeks later to his birthday party, as he said, and it was at a restaurant. So I got there, and there was no party. There were only 4 people: Teddy and his boyfriend and David. So it was a blind date. That's how we met. Teddy was his hairdresser. So he set us up, and literally we've been together since then. So yeah, there is no way that was gonna happen if I didn't move to LA, if I, all that, and really. So I do believe
that is the best blind date in history.
Exactly.
But I also think before then, walking down a street in Nairobi.
Yes.
And you could have been, as somebody pointed out once when they were writing about, you could have been on another street, but you happened to be walking on a street where Peter Beard saw you.
Exactly.
And that's really where it all started, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And if I didn't become a refugee in 1972, I was majoring in political science, I would never have become a model, or I would never have been in Kenya to meet even Peter, right? So yeah, I totally believe in destiny. I totally believe that things happen, that there were predestined things that will happen. However, you think your life is going this way, and a change of road changes everything.
Do you think about that now for what's coming? Do you have the same kind of outlook on the future?
No, because I've never had an outlook for the future, even those times. I've never thought I will meet David and, we'll get married. I never thought that I'd meet Peter Beard and end up a model above all things. Because I've never seen a fashion magazine. I've never known a model. I had no idea that this even existed. So no, I don't have an outlook for that, but I've always because of things that have happened to me like this, I always think of it, surprises. Surprises are on the way. Yeah.
You post on your Instagram, you post those homilies, those things that are those reassuring statements. The last one was, the world told her to be invisible, and she heard "be invincible,"
Exactly.
which is very much what your mother's message to you always was. And I just think of the balls you had. Some guy stops you on the street, which right away is kind of strange.
Yes.
And asks you to, go with him and be a model. And what would it take? And you said $8,000 to pay your tuition. I mean, that's pretty ballsy.
Well, he's the one who said, I will pay you, because I actually thought he was trying to pick me up.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
And he was extremely good looking.
Yeah, he was extremely good looking, but I was not interested. So, and he kept on talking to me and walked with me. And he said, then, I'd like to take pictures. So I was like, the only pictures I've seen of girls were like my brother's Playboy magazines. And I was like, I'm not that kind of a girl. And he said, no, I'll take pictures just from really just portraits of you. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was still not interested. And then he said, I will pay you. Now, mind you, I was doing two jobs. I was waitressing. I was a translator for the Ministry of Tourism brochures on safaris. I could not pay for my tuition. I was a refugee, just arrived in Kenya. So when he said, I'll pay you, that stopped me in my tracks. And I said, well, how much? Then he said, well, how much do you want? And I said, $8,000. That's my tuition. That was exactly my tuition. I didn't even think to ask for 10. But he did. He did. Needless to say, I never really finished even the tour. I came to the United States, and I came for a visit, actually. Yeah. Because I had no idea what I was walking into. So I thought I'll check it out and see what this is about. And here I am still.
So what did you walk into when you moved to New York? What did you walk into at that time?
I walked into a very foreign business that was foreign to me. It's a business that I thought a lot of young girls had no sense of self. I had a sense of self. I was raised by my mother from early on. Being a Muslim girl, my father always told me that I could do anything and even better than my two brothers. So that had that male encouragement in my family all the time. My father always believed in me. And then my mom, who wanted to make very sure that I had a sense of worth, right? My own sense of worth, because she thought if she can empower me in that, I can always make the right decision for myself if I had a sense of self-worth, right? So that's what she instilled in me, heavily instilled in me, to be able to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you well, regardless how enticing it is, whether it's a man or a work or whatever it is. So I came with that. So that was, I think, my superpower coming as a young girl who didn't know anything about this business, but I had a sense of self-worth, right? So one of the things that really happened to me in the job was that I found out that actually they were not paying the same rate Caucasians and African-American models, that African-American models were being paid less. So that was my first decision I made as a model. I told them that I'm not going to work. and I actually took a hiatus of 3 months. I didn't want to work. I said, because, I remember Wilhelmina agency, and Wilhelmina herself was around. And we had a talk, and I said, I want to be paid for services rendered. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, I'm not talking about black and white. I wasn't even thinking about black and white. I said, I'm doing the same job that the Caucasian model is doing. So I want to pay service rendered. Why am I getting paid less for the same job? So that's when my rate was raised to be paid as Caucasian models.
Who were the Caucasian models who were big at that time that were your sort of competition?
I can't remember if there is any competition. I can't even remember, because obviously I wasn't aware of the business, so I can't remember who was around.
I remember Beverly Johnson.
In 1976.
Yeah.
I remember Beverly Johnson because
Yeah.
I met her.
Yeah.
I met her. Beverly Johnson was already the top black model, but yeah, she wasn't being paid as much as the white counterpart.
So who did you have on your side to help you, apart from your own kind of resolve? Did you have any photographers or who went to bat for you? Anyone?
Beth Ann Hardison.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Beth Ann is my closest friend. And when I arrived in 1975, around 76, beginning of 76, I had to go and see Stephen Burrows, the black designer. And she was his assistant. So I walked in there, and at that time, people all believed, because Peter said, I discovered her in the jungle. I've never seen a jungle in my life.
But you were a princess, remember?
And I was a princess, and also I was a goat herder.
Oh.
And I didn't speak a word of English. And I spoke 5 languages before I arrived to the United States. So everybody thought of me that I didn't speak English. So everybody was freely speaking in front of me of how I looked. She's not that tall. She's not that beautiful. She's this and she's not that. So Stephen Burrows gave me a dress and heels to put on. And I put the dress on. And for the life of me, I could not find the balance to put the heels on. Because remember, I have not worn heels. So I was struggling, and Beth Ann saw. And she got on her knees to put the shoes on for me. That small act of kindness that I received that day was what bonded us, me and Beth Ann, and we became the best of friends, to the point that she's still in my life and was my maid of honor when I married David.
So this was after the 3 months of hiatus, or
yes.
So yeah. What was the trajectory from that moment with Stephen Burrows? Because I just remember I've been looking at old fashion shows, because I'm working on this book about Gianni Versace, and you are in all those shows being the star of the show, like 80s, late 70s.
Well, by then I've become a little bit of a pro. I learned on the job quite fast, but my first fashion show, I didn't even have working papers. My first fashion show, and the way he went around the working papers was that I was a guest. Halston. Halston knows exactly how to take advantage of whoever is hot, right? I was right on the scene. I could not work for anybody because I didn't have any working papers. So he said that he will hire me as his guest. And I remember walking there, going there with Peter, and in this tower of mirrors, and the ever-present cigarette in his hand, and hand in his pocket, right? Sunglasses, middle of the day, right? And he said, darling, can you walk? And I said, how the fuck do you think I got here? And he said, no, I mean, fashion walk. I said, I had no idea. So that's the first job I did. And I was terrified because people were so close to you and there were mirrors everywhere. So you had no idea if you were going to walk into a mirror, or, I was terrified. But that sense of Somalis, we have that sense of calmness from the outside, like the ducklings, inside we're terrified, but outside like calm.
But when that happened, then did you have stylists, fashion editors? Did everybody line up then? Magazines? Was everybody?
Yep. My first job was American Vogue. American Vogue was my first job with Arthur Elbert. Yes, and that was another eye-opening because when I arrived, there was another Caucasian model, I can't remember her name, and there was a makeup artist, and the makeup artist asked me a perplexing question. And I say perplexing because it was not lost on me that he didn't ask the Caucasian model the same question. He asked me, did you bring your own foundation? I was clueless. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said no. So he proceeded to do her makeup. And then when it came to me, he mixed some products and put it on my face. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't look brown anymore. I looked gray.
No.
And I was horrified, and I didn't know what to do, how to fix it. And thank God the pictures were black and white. That hides multitude of sins. But I learned that day that my image is my currency. So, and I need to take some kind of a control of how I'm going to be projected, how I'm going to be photographed, how I'm going to look, because they're not going to say the photographer didn't know how to light her, or the makeup artist didn't have the right foundation. They'll say, well, she doesn't look good in pictures, right? So my image is my currency. It doesn't matter how I look in real life, it's how I look in pictures. So I went and desperately went to all the stores and tried to find every foundation that had some kind of a tone closer to mine, and mix and match and put it on my face, and armed with a Polaroid camera, take a picture of myself to see how it will translate into the pictures, till I had some kind of a rough of what I had, what was available in the market. And I never went to any job without my own foundation.
So you did your own makeup in all those photographs?
And so did most Black models. No self-serving Black model who was working could go to a job without having something in her pocket, because most of the time the makeup artist had no clue how to do our makeup. And forget about hair. That's why most of the pictures you'll see our hair are just pulled back, because they didn't know what to do with it. So yeah, it's a learning experience, because you just have to maneuver and find your place in the system. Right?
But with that kind of self-awareness, did that kind of armor you against all the shit that everybody goes through? And never mind having to deal with all the the racist undertows and those things that happen to you as a Black model, but just the things that generally happen to a young woman trying to make her way in the modeling industry. You had this self-awareness, so you could actually kind of
do something. Do something about it. But the thing is, this is like a lot of people have say to me now, so what did you do? I mean, you can only change the system just in a way, but you can't change a whole system. For example, I'll give you, because remember the model Gia, lovely girl, lovely girl, but she had her own demons. She was a drug addict. They will prop her. She'll be late for a job 6-7 hours. I mean, I walked out of one of the jobs because I waited for her because we were supposed to do something together, and I waited for her for 5 hours. And the editors and the makeup photographer, everybody called the agent. They said they'll this and that about her. They talked behind her back like she was trash, right? And I waited for her. And when she arrived, I walked out of the job. And I told, for lack of better terms, not to be vulgar, but I said, find yourself another Black girl, find yourself a nigger. I said, I'm not going to do this. And it was their fault for allowing this to go on, right? Because if the girl is told, we're not going to work with you, and you don't work with her, you do not, celebrate the worst in a person's character and let them get away. If I did that, trust me, I would not be in the business. They would get rid of me in a day, right? So that's what the business is. Our own business, that is what it is. If you are somebody who's valuable to them, meaning that sells and they like your look, they'll allow you to get away with murder, right? While there are people who are on the sidelines who are professionals and want to work and who are never given the chances.
Was this in America or was this in Europe?
America.
So
America. Gia never worked that, never went to work with that. Yeah, she couldn't.
Did you find it was different when you went to work in Europe? Did you find there was a different attitude to
black models? To black models.
Yeah.
Black models, yes, definitely, especially the designers. Most designers worked with black models. I mean, like Givenchy, 80% of his filet, especially runway models, were black, right? So was Saint Laurent, right? So no, there was a difference when it came to the business of especially runway, not necessarily editorial. Editorial, very few of us made it through the editorial. But the runway, yeah, they were open to that.
Because I looking at those old Versace shows, for example, we're always told that it was around the time of Linda, Christie, Cindy, Naomi that editorial models made that move to runway. But you did runway and editorial all along.
I did. And talking about Versace, actually, Versace was the only designer and the first designer who actually, when I was modeling, and I was doing all the big designers at that time, one season called my agency and he said, I want her to come to Milan exclusively for me and not work for any other designer, and I will compensate her for that. And so that he was the first one who knew how to take, he knew how to understand how to make something meaningful of what is going on in the zeitgeist, i.e. then the supermodels, Naomi, Linda, Cindy, the group. He was fully aware of what the culture means and what the zeitgeist means, and how to make it that. He was making himself, it was not lost on me, he was making himself famous by just doing that, by taking away from Armani and everybody else the top model, which was me, and she's going to be only for me. So that makes the news. So he was not, it wasn't lost on me, and bravo to him.
And you could feel the industry changing at that point.
Yes.
And was that exciting or was it validating? How did you feel?
Well, it's validating because all of a sudden at that time you could feel that the cult of the model was coming up. We were almost more important. Like I remember Carrie Donovan. Remember Carrie?
Yes, yeah.
Carrie Donovan. If she was late for a show, she would rush in to the designer and say, "Oh, just show me Iman's rack," because she will know the best of the clothes will be on there, right? So all of a sudden, the cult of the model was coming up. Yeah, so that was exciting because we were being treated differently.
And how did you cope with that? Already you had this kind of "don't fuck with me" self-awareness. So as stardom beckoned, it must have been a very interesting situation to be in.
It's an interesting situation, but don't forget, we are in a business that newness is God, right? So you can't sit on your laurels and think you're it, because somebody always will come after you. There is always a prettier girl. There's always there's always somebody who can replace you. So I always jokingly have said, when people say, "Well, you were at the top of your career when you left. Why did you leave?" I said, "There were Naomi, Linda, Christy coming behind me."
You were actually on the catwalk with them too.
Yes,
So
but
you were at
I'm smart enough to say I've done my place. I've done so. I'm gonna gracefully exit and you know I've always prided myself to know when to leave the party. That's the secret to my success.
wow. If you could put that in a bottle, that would be a big help. I mean, but then it took you after that awareness about things like foundation and so on that what wasn't right for your skin. It took you quite a while later to launch your answer to that when you did your own cosmetics line.
Yeah, I actually launched it after I retired from modeling. I retired from modeling in 1989. And I have not been to a fashion show since then.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Not one?
Not one. And I'll tell you why. Two things happen. One is that, actually three things. One is that I was trying to I was creating Iman Cosmetics. So I was trying to divorce myself from being a model to being a businesswoman, to be taken seriously. So that was one. Second was that I worked with almost all the designers. So it was very difficult to go, who to go to what show. And they all invited me to their shows, but who to go and who not to go. And if I go to all the shows, I know our industry, they'll say, oh, poor thing, she wants to come back. And you know, our industry is all about the peekaboo, the mystery of it, right? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit this one out. But the one that put the nail on the coffin, so to speak, was that there were all these B, C, D celebrities who were coming to the shows, shows were being delayed, like a Paris Hilton, or you know, it's like, so what do you mean they delayed 40 minutes because Shiri wasn't there? You know, so the nature of the business changed in that way. And I wasn't gonna, I was like, okay, you know what? I'll watch it online. So
but
that's how.
You still stayed interested. You still stayed curious about.
Oh, of course. You know, hey, I'm curious about beauty, but also I love fashion. Yeah, no, I love fashion. I love fashion.
As a girl, as a refugee from Somalia.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Who made it to the top of the ladder. When you look at that whole moment in your life, what was your happiest? What was when you really felt when you felt loved and you felt that what you did was appreciated and understood, and importantly, maybe.
I personally, I found that, you know, when it's like when people ask me who's your favorite photographer, it's very difficult, you know, because each one of them have a unique thing to them, right? As difficult as Hans Führer is, and he is difficult, but takes the most amazing pictures, and we did the most amazing campaign, the two of us, for Kenzo, that it's like timeless, right? Avedon, it's completely the opposites, you know, so it's very difficult to say that is my favorite photographer. It's like saying who's my favorite designer. You know, I'm very diverse in what I like, so I wouldn't. But if there was one designer that I have meshed in with, although, you know, like, I mean, I worked from diverse people, from Yves Saint Laurent to Thierry Mugler, right? So it couldn't be more opposites. And each one of them have a different way of doing things. They all have a special place in my heart because of how each one of them saw me. And it is amazing when you find, and this is what the fond memories I have, is the amazing how they seen the facets and the complexity of me and different parts of me, that I am all of them, all of these women, but they each saw me in a different way, but that was part of me.
So who, you said there was one?
Thierry Mugler.
Oh, Thierry Mugler.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Thierry, because Thierry was like, if you could think about what MGM used to be, that is Thierry. You know, everything is cinematic, is operatic, you know, is over the top, but also he treats every girl differently, separately, you know, and he's this film director who's creating this craziness, right? I mean, I was very happy for him when he actually made finally lots of money with Angel, with his fragrance, because he's amazing to work with, amazing to work with. But then you have Yves Saint Laurent, it is iconic, and how he works. I mean, I was once I had the privilege of being the muse for a whole collection, and I had no idea what it entailed. So I get there, and it's for 10 days, and it's like from morning they give you pantyhose with a seam at the back, like it was 1940s, black pumps, and a robe, a white robe, like a doctor's lab robe. And then you're walked into this huge room with bolts of fabric. And I'm standing there, take the robe off, and he's cutting swaths of fabric on my body. I've never had that experience with anybody but him, and once. And I'll forever remember it. I mean, I come from a country that we love color, but so to me, to see all these colors mixed and matched, and you think they will clash, but then brilliantly they work, and it's a truly an experience that very few of us have it.
And when I watch the best models at work, I always think it's the most incredible performance. I mean, I feel like they're amazing actresses, and I'm not sure that people get enough credit for what that job actually involves. I'm a huge fan of
and look at Galliano. I mean, like John Galliano. I mean, I unfortunately I retired after he started with Dior and all that. I mean, but for me it was like the second step from Thierry Mugler to Galliano. It was like theater when you're watching the stage, it and to give the permission to the models to become that, to act individually rather than a group of, and the nature of the runway changed, because they used to have they used to have photographers on the side, so you were aware of people on the side.
Yeah.
And now it's all a mosh pit, right? So but I love when Galliano creates all this drama on a runway, and it goes, everybody starts to become their own persona. It's great.
You were never tempted to take it on into, acting?
I did. I don't think I'm a good actress. As I always said, you've got to cut your losses.
Maybe you just have to be Iman. Maybe your greatest performance is Iman.
I heard Eddie Murphy say yesterday because he's doing this movie coming to America #2, the sequel. Anyway, he said he hasn't done a movie for so many years. They said, well, what happened? He said, oh, I did 3 bad consecutive movies that I was so embarrassed on them that I said, maybe I should sit this out, So that's the thing. I haven't done bad movies, but I knew I was not good at it.
Yeah.
So it's like, cut your losses.
But after you retired from fashion, the 90s were an amazing decade in fashion creatively. And then since the turn of the century, we've seen fashion really being, really having to respond to the real world, and really having to take on board enormous issues that maybe it had avoided before. Yeah. And I guess discrimination is one of them. So when you look at the industry now, what do you think the biggest changes are, especially over the last couple of years, especially last year with BLM, Black Lives Matter, and then the climate crisis before then, that fashion now has a real activist element. Yes. It has to have an activist, because that's what people demand from it.
Exactly. And I think the change was forced upon fashion. Mm-hmm. They were not ready for it. They were changed by kicking and screaming, right? So I don't feel optimistic about that, because if that didn't happen, like single-handedly, the murdering of George Floyd changed the world, so to speak, and of course changed fashion, because then people started actually demanding and not even demanding, but putting a light on what was going on, right? And so I think then the change immediately happened. And when change immediately happens, that people have not thought it through before and all that, some of us say, well, any change is good change. Granted, but I don't feel optimistic about it, because I want them to really put people in places, in the decision-making places, right? Not to give a black model a cover and, and then call it a day. But to make it in those decision-making positions so that real change can happen. And I'm not talking about tokenism also, it's not like saying, oh yeah, well, we'll put it somebody so that we'll say, okay, we have somebody, right? The New York Times just did a whole article, talking about step by step what has happened since all this has happened. And, there's not that much change, right? And so that is it's real concrete changes. And as I said, it's not about tokenism, it's about people who are really qualified for the job to be given the opportunity to be on the job, right? And this is what we've been talking about for years and years about it. Beth Ann and I have been talking about diversity and inclusion in fashion industry since the 80s, right? We created the Black Girls Coalition and have brought in all the models, all the Black models in the fold who was working at that time, from Tyra Banks, Naomi Campbell, Karen Alexander, all the models. But we were talking about not only for Black models, we're talking about also Black creatives, the hairdressers, the makeup artists, the stylists, the photographers. So that is what it's really now, the little bit of a change you're seeing. You're seeing the first Black photographer taking the cover of Vanity Fair. You're seeing those changes because the creatives are there. Is they never been hired? No, or nobody's even said, I would like to see your portfolio. I'd like to see different people's portfolio, right?
Yeah. Now you talked about when you were becoming big, you and Beverly Johnson were played off against each other as a sort of either or situation, not both, either or.
Yeah.
When you look around you now, though, with say what Edward Innenfull is doing, with British Vogue, you see a lot more people of color in magazine pages. Do you feel good when you see that? Do you feel, yes, like when you started your coalition with Beth Ann, this is kind of what you wanted to see?
But
do you feel optimistic, or do you still feel this tokenism, or what?
No. I still feel optimistic about specifically what Edward Innenfull is doing, right? Because he's been doing that since even when he was a stylist. Right. So it's not something new to him. Is the periphery, is we've been talking about that, about when big companies get into trouble, like the Pradas, and you saw Gucci at one moment, so you saw H&M, why aren't there people who are actually in the position of the decision making that things like that should not be happening? But when I'm talking about the Black Girls Coalition with Beth Ann, I mean, that was in the 80s and things a little bit changed, but then they closed. And even in 2013, Beth Ann and I saw an article in the New York Times said, this is 2013, it said the blonde leading the blonde. And in the article was the absence of Black models across the board in that season, in Europe and in America. Like they did not exist. And then we find out that Prada, this is 2013, that Prada didn't use a Black model for 6 years. That Celine never used a Black model, right? So, and that's 2013. And then we decided that we were going to write to the CFDA, and Naomi Campbell, Beth Ann, and I, the three of us, took upon us that to write to the CFDA and also to all the designers in Europe on talking about specifically about that. And what was the problem at that time, which was addressed, by the way, was that most designers have started to have more shows than possible in a year. So designers who used to be able to do their own casting, right, hired casting agents. So the casting agent becomes the person who's before you see the designer. So the designer tells the casting agent what he's looking for, what the show is about that season, blah, 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 go find me the girls. And the casting agent became so full of themselves that they would say to the agencies, we don't want any Black models this season, like as if we are a trend. And that is what happened. So when we focus the highlight, the three of us, Naomi, Beth Ann, and I, when we focus the highlight of what was going on and where the problem is, it wasn't about saying designers are racist. Is that we wanted to highlight the designers, that what these casting agents that they're hiring, what they're doing on behalf of them, right? So, I mean, you cannot believe the shift and the change. It was palpable. It was like a switch happened, right? And then all of a sudden you started seeing in editorial, the Black models, you saw it in advertisement, Black models. The change became real because all of a sudden designers became aware of what was going on. And I've always said, nobody is busier than Tom Ford, and he does his own casting. You know, so they became aware of what was going on behalf of their name and what was being, perpetuated. So that happened, but then what happens is, like we all know, what happens is that things change and then they go back.
Yes, yeah.
So that is why I'm saying that what's happening now, this change that is forced upon them, I hope that they see and learn something from it. That if nothing else, I'm talking about from a businesswoman's point of view, it's good business. It's just good business. If you don't think about it black and white, just think about business. You know.
And the change has to be, it can't be forced. It is forced, but ultimately it has to be an organic change. So exactly. You're seeing, the most incredible talents in fashion right now are stylists like Ibrahim Kamara and photographers like Tyler Mitchell, Campbell Addy, all these young guys coming through, and they're just, in a set, what you want the world to be is where the color of their skin is incidental. It's just their incredible talent, which is shining now.
Yeah, and that's what I would like to see. I mean, if you looked at those pictures that these Black photographers took, you just say, "Oh wow, that's a new. I've never seen that." Who's that? You don't think it's a Black photographer or a white photographer. You look at the picture, and that is what you're saying about organic. It's that once if you feel you're forced, you're not going to be doing a good job, and in any way you're going to go to your own bad habits.
Absolutely.
So it's like, just be open. Like as I said about my paintings, you don't have to be good at it, but just be open, right?
Love what you do.
Yeah.
But where is your activism focused now? Where are those instincts focused now? I know you were working with the Hawa Abdi Foundation in Somalia.
That was specifically in Somalia. No, I've always been moved by organizations that help women and girls. Because when I became a refugee, one of the things that it occurred to me, it was like how those non-government organizations on the ground in Kenya, if they did not protect me, I'm quite certain that something would have happened to me. I was too young of a girl to be on my own, right? Sexual harassment, rape, anything could have happened to me if they checked on me 3 times a day, right? They made sure that if I needed a job, they'll go with me, right? So I've never forgotten the kindness of those angels that walk among us. And so I've always taken that with me, and it informed all the philanthropic work I do is usually geared towards women and girls, and they're empowering them. And so I became, for the first time, for them and for me, I've never associated myself with one organization only, but I became the global advocate for CARE. CARE is the oldest organization, and it started in 1970. I mean, it started 75 years ago, as the World War II was finishing with the horrific hunger that was happening in Europe. They started in America what was called then the care package, and it has become like a synonymous word for now in our language, the care package. And the care package was putting a package of food that you select and you're sending it to Europe. And so they have been doing this now around the world in terms of taking care of different parts of the world. And so I came on board specifically actually to I'm highlighting mostly in the work for women and girls and empowering women and girls across the board. Because what I find, especially in my continent, in Africa, is that if you empower a woman, she is going to empower and take care of her family and her community, and hence the country. That is given. And in the pandemic that's happening now, they are most of the health workers in Africa are women, right? So, and they're the ones that are still at the home front. And so, so that is where my work now has gone into, is helping care.
You know, it's so interesting in fashion when we've had Alec Weck, we've had Aduta Kesh, women of color who become incredibly successful as models who were refugees.
Yes.
And there's that thing that people say about refugees is that they're born nomads. And actually they're never home. And I wonder if you feel like that your story is a bit like that as well. As a refugee.
Not only as a refugee, but Somalis are nomads anyway. We are a country that of nomads. But what happens to a refugee, and this is what I've always wanted to make sure especially the West, and especially how immigration now it's thought about a bad thing, right? Is that no person wants to become a refugee. I am the face of a refugee, so it's not that we want to be in countries that we feel foreign, that are not accepted, that we are away from our loved ones. This is not the ideal life we wanted for ourselves, but that is what happens. People are persecuted, or there is reasons that they leave home and look for shelter somewhere else. And there are people who have been in refugee camps all their lives, are born in refugee camp, grow up in refugee camp, and still a refugee camp. Nobody wants to be in that situation. Trust me, if they could go home, they would all want to go home. Because one thing I will tell you, with everything I have made of myself and money and whatever, when my mom was passing away 6 years ago, the only thing she wanted was to be buried in Somalia. That's a refugee. The longing to be home again, but you can't, right? So for people to understand the plight of a refugee, it's not we want to be here. We just have to be here, right? And most of us actually become part and parcel of the countries that hosts us. We really, really become part. Like I'm a Somali, but I'm an American, because that's the place that took me in, right? So that's the plight of a refugee. And I really want, especially in the immigration and the world of how people are thinking of immigrants, is to really, for them to really think it and have an empathy of understanding of why people become refugees.
And are you home now?
No. No, I don't think I'll ever be home, but wherever now my daughter is home. I have two daughters, but also I have a son, David's son. So we're all close family. I talk to everybody on Sundays, FaceTime. One of the things that have come out of this is like, actually, I haven't seen them, but I FaceTime them more than I've ever FaceTimed them. Yeah. I do paintings with my grandchild, who's 3 years old, from my older daughter. We paint together every Sunday. So that's what has come up. But as a Somali refugee, am I home? No.
Well, Iman, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to see you, and do not cut your hair.
No. Every so often I catch a glimpse and I think, oh God.
No, do this.
All my love, and
Thank you.
stay safe and well. And I hope I see you
Soon.
soon.
So as they say, inshallah. That's what Muslims say, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.